Hey, what's going on, guys? DJ Man here, back here with the very first episode of the Nerdy Station podcast. Let's go ahead and roll that random intro.
I did my time and I went out. So refuse to have faith. It doesn't cut. The soul is not so vibrant. The reckoning, the sickening, packaging subversion, pseudo-sacred.
Again, welcome to the very first episode of the Nerdy Station podcast. So, with this podcast, we're going to be talking about all things nerdy, from video games, anime, and other nerd-like things that catch my attention. So, the way this podcast kind of came to be is that I've been wanting to do discussion like videos for a while now, but I really never couldn't really figure out a best way to do it. And then I have a friend who does a podcast. They don't do anything related to video games, anime, or other entertainment news. They have their own thing going on. I was like, hey, if they can do a podcast, I can do a podcast, and that would be a perfect way for me to do my discussion like videos that I want to do. So here we are. So sadly, I don't have a guest with me at this very moment, but there's a chance that they may join me later on for the main discussion of this video, which is going to be how important is the length of the video game. Hopefully I might have somebody join me later on when we get to that point, or it might just be me. We'll just have to see. But yeah, that's today's topic, is how important is the length of the video game. But before we get to that, there are a few other topics that I want to talk about. Like, firstly, the way I want to start off these podcasts is by asking my guest, if I had one, what's something positive that's happened to them this week. And so since I don't have a guest, I guess I'll just answer the question myself. And that is, just starting this podcast has been pretty positive. Something, again, is something I've been wanting to do, and now I'm doing it. So let's go ahead and get into the news. The first piece of news is that The Last of Us 2 has a new release date. The thing is that it's only been pushed back 2.5 weeks from its May 29th release date to June 19th, which came to a surprise to a lot of people, including myself, because when they announced that the game was going to be getting delayed, again, they said that it was indefinite, meaning that they didn't know exactly when they were going to push it. And then on top of that, when they said that they were moving the delaying the game again, they were also canceling pre-orders for the game. So it got people thinking, like, man, when is this game going to come out? So, again, I was thinking it was going to be like a couple of months, but no, they're only pushing it 2 weeks. So that's a bit of a head scratcher. Also, because of them moving the release date to June 19th, they're going to be pushing Ghost of Tsushima to July 17th, when its original release date was going to be June 26th, which would have put it in direct competition with The Last of Us. And that's just bad competition, or bad business, because, they're both PlayStation exclusives and they want them to do well. To be honest with you guys, I'm really not that excited about Last of Us 2, so if it was pushed back a couple of months, it wouldn't have really affected me at all. I mean, I enjoyed playing through the first game, but I don't love it as much as everybody else seems to. But I am happy for the people that are excited for it, that don't have to wait, extremely long time. Again, it's only been pushed back 2 weeks when Sony was sitting there scaring us, making us think it was going to be much longer than that. Our next bit of news centers around the Twitch streamer Invader V, and there's a clip of her sub-shaming her viewers. So I'm going to be paraphrasing here, but what she said, she's like, hey, it's only $5 to sub. I understand if it was $20, but it's only $5. She says, no matter how broke you are, you should have $10, and if you don't, you shouldn't be wasting your time watching Twitch. And she was just extremely smug while saying all this stuff, and then she kind of goes on to say that if you're broke, what you really mean to say is that you're irresponsible with your money and you can't afford to support your entertainment. And I'm like, there's kind of multiple things just kind of hit my mind while she was saying all this stuff. One of the main things is that, how are you going to complain about putting out free content on Twitch? That's what it's built around. It's built around you putting out this free content. People come to you. If they want to sub to you, they can. If they want to donate to you can. So I don't see why you're complaining. Like, I'm pretty sure there's some type of service out there where people will have to pay to see you, but when you're on Twitch, you don't have to do that, so you can't really complain. You should just be happy that you're getting the viewers that you are. Like, I'm just happy even if just a few people even listen to the first few minutes of this podcast, just to click on it, just to check it out, The next thing that kind of pops in my head is, how is she going to say stuff about you should be out getting a job when, we're in the middle of this pandemic, where at least here in the US, over 20 million people are out of work, And that number just keeps rising and rising. I think Pokimane said it best. She had put out a tweet not too long ago that said, if $5 is so insignificant, then why does she need it from you? So I decided to look up this person and see what type of entertainment that she actually provides. And all I could really find was her just kind of, you know, putting on like cute outfits, putting on a cat outfit, putting on knee-high socks and stockings and wearing skirts and wearing shorts. And so I'm like, okay, like, and then just kind of sits there on her, what do you call it, a pillow fort or whatever it is. And she just sits there and talks to her audience. And I'm like, okay. Like, you're cute and you provide conversation. I'm pretty sure there's hundreds of other, if not thousands of other Twitch streamers that do pretty much the same thing as her. Why, I mean, what makes you so special? Why are you sub shaming your audience? It's just so out of whack. I don't know. Now the thing is that I don't really have any issues with streamers that use their bodies, or some people call them titty streamers, or I just don't have any real issues with streamers that do that type of thing. If they got the body for it, then all the power to them. I'm just not going to hate on their hustle if they choose to use their bodies to get a few extra views. I know if I was super muscular and super handsome, then I would try to use my looks to try to get some more views if I wanted to be a Twitch streamer. So I can't really hate on their hustle. And since we're talking about Twitch, I just want to go and tell you guys how I feel about Twitch in general. And honestly, it's just not my thing. I'm just not really into watching streams or streamers at all. I just rather watch edited content, or if I am going to watch somebody, do something for a period of time that's not edited, then it should be in smaller chunks, like a 10-minute video, rather than watching somebody do stuff for an hour or two. It's just, Twitch streaming just isn't my thing. But maybe one day I'll get into it. Like before, at least maybe a few years back, I still wasn't really into watching people play video games on YouTube. Because I'm like, I could be playing the game themselves. I don't really care for these people that are just yelling at each other and blah, blah, blah. But eventually, one of my favorite, YouTubers now is Dashy, who loves to yell at his video game. So, maybe one day I could be turned over. But right now, I'm just not really into Twitch. Or rather, watching streams in general. Now, getting back on topic with this whole Invader V situation, this could be good for her because, outrage marketing and all that nonsense. I was watching Angry Joe's video on this topic, and he said that Bad Bunny, who did something very similar, where she did something very controversial and blah, 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 that her income has actually doubled, or maybe she at least has to double the amount of viewers that she did before that controversy. So maybe this could be good for her. Who knows? Now, since that clip of her blew up, she has put out an apology video, and she actually does seem pretty apologetic in my eyes. Again, I'm going to be paraphrasing here, but in that video, she's like, hey, you guys are justified in being mad. I recognize what I said was wrong. She said she's not going to try to flip her words and try to say, hey, you guys are just taking it out of context. It's just a joke. No, seems like she's really owning up to it. And then she goes on to say, that's not how I really feel, and, all that good stuff there. And she does actually end up answering a question that seems to be coming from her chat. That's the person in the chat's asking, like, hey, you said you weren't going to change your opinion. Are you only making this video because it blew up like it did? And she says that, she doubled down on a bad opinion. And that's what people do, you guys, whenever they feel like they're pushed into a corner or they're feeling they're being attacked. Sometimes they just really do just double down on a bad opinion. That's just something that does happen. And you guys, I'm kind of willing to give her a pass because honestly, this is her first real controversy. I could only really find one other kind of weird thing that's kind of happened in the past, and that is that she admitted that sometimes when somebody donates to her, she'll look at their PayPal and she can see their names, and so then she'll go look up that person on LinkedIn to see what type of job they have and whatnot. So that's a little bit weird, but that's not really like, destroy the person type of weird. Now, the thing is that there are other clips from that same Twitch stream that, not just the one that blew up, there are other ones that just didn't blow up as much as that one did, as much as the main one did. She did go on a little bit of a rant saying some nasty things, but again, that may have just been her, doubling down on a bad opinion. Maybe that was her just being a little bit frustrated with Twitch. There could be a number of things. I'm willing to give her a pass because, this is her first time really, acting up. But if something similar happens, it's all over. So our next bit of news also centers around a Twitch streamer, and her name is Alinity. Yes, she's back in the news. The reason why that name may sound familiar is because she's known as the person who threw her cat on stream, had the cat drink some vodka, some type of alcoholic drink on stream, and she didn't get banned. So she is back in the news because she had a nip slip on stream. It was like for half a second, but it still happened, and she was banned, or rather suspended for one day from Twitch. Of course, there's been a bit of controversy behind this. Well, the first thing is that I'm one of those people that doesn't think that she should have been banned for this. In fact, I don't think any Twitch streamer that goes through something similar or goes through a similar situation where they accidentally show a private part for less than a couple of seconds should be banned. In Elidity's case, she was just messing around, putting a pillow up her shirt, and a titty popped out. It was on screen for less than a second, but you know how things go. And the thing is that she was really surprised. She had a really surprised look on her face. It was completely on accident, and I don't think that she should have been banned for this. Granted, it was for only one day. So where does the controversy kind of come in? Well, it's how long it took Twitch to actually ban her. People were upset because Twitch has banned people for less and for a lot quicker. And, people were, starting to think that she wasn't even going to get banned at all. She did, but it was only for one day. And that's also got people a little bit upset because, there has been other streamers that have had nip slips on stream and have been banned a lot longer than that. Even Alinity was like, hey, this is a pretty, short. I'm going to try to make it longer. So even Alinity was kind of sort of begging Twitch to be like, hey, give me a ban. There's some other stuff going on right before she was banned, saying like, hey, this is unfair. There was just a bunch of stuff going on. It's like, so I'm just going to end this story by saying again, I don't think she should have been banned. But Twitch, if you're going to enforce these rules, then you got to treat everyone the same or loosen up the rules, which is what I think they should do. Our next bit of gaming news is that Crash Bandicoot could be, or a new Crash game could be a launch title for the PlayStation 5. There have been rumors that someone has been working on a Crash game for like 3 years now. The Insane Trilogy did extremely well, so it wouldn't be the most surprising thing if this rumor turned out to be true. Our next bit of news and our last piece of gaming news is that GameStop is planning, or at least planning on reopening some of its stores. And people have gone a little bit wild with this particular story because there are a lot of people that really don't like GameStop and like to hop on the bandwagon of beating down on whenever they get the chance. So of course people have come out hearing this news that GameStop is opening some of the stores in some different locations. I think maybe like in 2 different states here in the U.S. and maybe some other places around the world. And people are like, oh man, they're just greedy for money. They're just putting their customers in danger. They're putting their employees in danger and all this stuff. And I'm like, you guys, I'm sure that once GameStop is planning, the fact that GameStop is planning on reopening means that they're going to be following social distancing guidelines, that they're going to have something in place to protect their employees. They're going to actually have something this time. I can understand why people were hating on them before because they were trying to put themselves off as an essential business and try to stay open, and they were doing something weird where the employees had to put like plastic bags around their hands and try to hand the stuff to the customers. So that was a little weird, but I'm pretty sure that them reopening, they're going to have something in place to protect their employees. So people maybe need to calm down a little bit. I'm just not one that wants to beat up on GameStop that much because I actually like GameStop, or at least I like the stores around me. They're all pretty good to me, and so maybe that's why I don't really see GameStop as much as a punching bag as other people do. Let's go ahead and get into some anime news. Our first piece of anime news is that Pokemon, or at least the newest Pokemon series, is coming to Netflix. Which is a little surprising. So Pokemon was on Cartoon Network for the longest time. Like I think they had it from the 3rd generation all the way up to right before Sun and Moon started. And then Disney got a hold of it, and now it's going to Netflix and will be premiering its English dubbed episodes there. I think the first 12 episodes of the anime will debut on Netflix on June 12th, and the service will add new episodes quarterly. So every like 4 months, we'll probably get another batch of 12 episodes. And I think it's listed as, or is going to be listed as, a Netflix original series. So it gets me thinking: is Pokemon going to premiere? Is it going to premiere on television at all, or is it just going to be on streaming? If it is on television, is it still going to be on Disney? it's just just kind of just kind of curious here. I think one cool thing that so what makes this not too surprising is that Netflix did premiere that Pokemon what was what's the word I'm looking for? Remake, that Pokemon, the first Pokemon movie remake. The one that was done in 3D. They're the ones that premiered it, at least in English. So yeah, Netflix has Pokemon now. Interesting. Our next bit of anime news is that all the anime is getting delayed. I mean, The Promised Neverland, Boruto, the new Digimon series is getting delayed, Pokemon, Black Clover, even the biggest anime out there, One Piece, is getting delayed because, of course, the coronavirus. It's just first it was, what was it? First it was sports, then it was all the restaurants and other stores, and then we started hearing about all the other entertainment news of movies getting pushed back, and now it's starting to affect the anime world. I just hope you all are staying safe out there. Our next bit of anime news comes from One Piece, and that is the One Piece anime English dub returns with a home video release on June 9th. And oh my gosh, I can't be more excited. Well, I'm not that excited, but I'm just glad to see that it's back. It's after like 2 years of no new English dub episodes. It's finally coming back. The reason why that I believe, at least here's my theory, the reason why they weren't really doing One Piece or why it had to go on such a long hiatus is because Funimation just had too much food in the pot and that pot was starting to overflow. They had, I think at the time they had Dragon Ball Super, the new Fairy Tail anime was coming back. They had Black Clover, My Hero, all these longer running shonen shows. And then on top of that, they had a bunch of their simulcast dub shows. So something had to go in the back burner, and that just happened to be One Piece. But I'm happy to see that they're deciding, even after 2 years, that they're going to decide to bring One Piece back with its English dub releases. Our next bit of anime news also has to do with One Piece, and that is One Piece is coming to Netflix. Its first two seasons, or rather its first two arcs, the East Blue and Alabasta arcs, will be coming to Netflix on June 12th, which covers around the first 130 episodes of One Piece. So yeah, if you're into One Piece, if you're a person that's never gotten into One Piece, I feel like One Piece is a great series to binge watch. If you haven't gotten into it, I know it seems like pretty daunting task to get into One Piece because I think it's over 900 episodes now. But here's the perfect chance to get into it if you haven't yet. And this is coming from experience because there was one time I had stopped watching One Piece, and I think I picked it up at around somewhere in the 300s, and then I just sat back and just binged watched like 70 episodes over a course of a summer. So it's very binge watchable, so give it a chance if you haven't. In other news, it's been announced that Hollywood will be doing a One Punch Man movie, and I think it's going to be from the writers behind the Jumanji movie or the writers behind the Venom movie, one of the two, or maybe it's both. Let's just say it's coming from Sony. So I'm actually pretty excited. I think One Punch Man shouldn't be that hard to translate into Hollywood. It's maybe a lot of other anime properties are kind of hard, but One Punch Man has a pretty simple premise of a guy who just overtrained to the point where he can kill his enemies in one punch, and he's a little bit depressed about the fact he's not able to find someone that he can challenge to really challenge him. So I feel like that's a pretty easy premise. It shouldn't be too hard for them. They shouldn't be able to mess this up. I think they got the writers of Jumanji and again, Jumanji and Venom, which I like the comedy in those two movies. So hopefully they don't do, again, a lot of people worried that they might do too much comedy, but I feel like it should be okay. And I think that One Punch Man is a good anime to go with because people love their superheroes. And One Punch Man is about a world full of superheroes. So I just hope for the best for this movie. Our last bit of anime related news is that Netflix live action Cowboy Bebop show is already, putting in plans for season 2. So I'm guessing they're really pretty confident in this particular show. I think the production is on hold because of COVID-19, and I believe it was also on hold because I think the lead actor had hurt himself. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But yeah, but they've already put them in plans for season 2. But at the same time, I think this is what some shows do. They go ahead and do the first season and they start the second one. And then, because just in case the show is a success, they don't want to sit there and have their audience waiting too long for the next season. So I'm not really sure if this is good news or if this is just business. So I think that's all the news that I have for you all. So let's go ahead and move on to the next section of the podcast, which I'm going to dub What Have You Been Playing? This is where I would ask if I had a host or a guest with me what games they have been playing. But since I don't have anybody with me right now, we're just going to be talking about what I've been playing. And the game that I recently just finished was Far Cry New Dawn. So I'm going to do like a little bit of a mini review here. So if you guys, so just it's just long story short. If you guys don't like Far Cry, its gameplay or its storytelling, then this game probably won't be for you. But if you like Far Cry, then you'll find this game extremely entertaining. And again, I'm not gonna go into any major spoilers here for anyone that hasn't played Far Cry New Dawn yet. So let me go ahead and get into it for those that want to know about it. So it takes place around 17 years after Far Cry 5, which is new for the series because most of the time the Far Cry games are separate from each other. So for example, Far Cry 3 has nothing to do with Far Cry 4, and Far Cry 4 has nothing to do with Far Cry 5. But Far Cry 5 is directly connected to Far Cry New Dawn. Again, it takes place 17 years later. So, long story short, at the end of Far Cry 5, slight spoilers for that game. At the end of that game, I'm not going to give you guys any real context, but let's just say that some nukes were set off and people had to go underground for a few years until radiation had went away. Now people have come back to the surface and are trying to start a new life in this new world. This is where our antagonists come in, those being the twins and their henchmen, the highwaymen. It's up to you to kind of liberate the land from them, and it's just really, really fun. Some things are the same while other things are different. One of the things that carries over from Far Cry 5 are the specialists, your partner that you can bring along with you. These are people that have special characteristics, like one person can specialize in sniping, another one can specialize in explosives, and the game carries over a few other things that I may go over in a full review. One of the biggest differences is that the weapons are put into a ranking system, kind of like in Fortnite, where you have a gray weapon, a blue weapon, a purple, then gold, or rather, I think in Fortnite it goes gray, green, blue, purple, then gold. While in Far Cry it goes gray, blue, purple, and then gold. And then the same can be said about the enemies. They're also put in the ranking systems too, where they're either gray, blue, purple, or then gold. And the enemies have health bars in this game, which I think is new to the series. I really enjoyed, exploring this world, doing the main missions and the side missions. For the most part, you can pretty much go anywhere on the map from the get-go, except for maybe a few places. I do have a few minor gripes that I'll go over in the full review, but one of my biggest gripes that happens towards the end of the game, again, no spoilers, but let's just say that throughout the game that you've been building up your base called prosperity, and you've been building it, you've been helping these people protect their home, and at the end of the game, you expect there maybe be a little bit of war between you and this other faction, being the highwaymen. But the thing is that towards the end of the game, it seems like the game kind of forgets that prosperity exists, and you just kind of become a one-man army, which is a little disappointing. Like, it's like, I've been spending all this time with these people and helping them build back their home. They should be helping me towards the end of the game. But again, that's just a small gripe. So I'm going to give this game the score of buy it at a small discount, being that this game was worth, I believe, what I consider to be a small discount is like 20 to 35% off. And I believe this game came out at $40. So if you can find this game at $30 or less, then I say it's a definite buy. Also, I clocked in at about 15 and a half hours playing this game. This is with me, doing some hunting challenges and kind of just playing around a bit and I did probably around maybe 60 to 70% of the side missions. So I got a decent amount of time left with this game. So let's move on to our next segment, which is what have I been watching? And one of the things, I've been watching two things recently. One of them, and they're both pretty much polar opposites of each other. The first show that I'm going to talk about is Love, Chunibyo, and Other Delusions. This anime centers around a character named Yuta who used to have Chunibyo. What is Chunibyo? Well, it's also known as 8th grade syndrome. It is where you like to pretend that you have magical powers or superpowers, and he ended up being super embarrassed about it now that he's kind of grown out of that. Yuta wants to leave that part of him in the past, and he chooses to go to a school far away from his old middle school, so no one will recognize him. So he can start off with a clean slate, and be a normal high school student. But then this character named Rika finds out about his past, and she is really into being Chinibyo, and she kind of gravitates towards Yuta because of his past. And Yuta, being the nice guy that he is, kind of understands Rika and kind of feels bad for her and is like, all right, I'll be friends with you, just don't tell anyone about my past. So this is where our heartwarming comedy ensues. It's funny. I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying it just as much as I did the first time, which is a pretty high compliment. It's on Netflix. Give it a shot if you haven't. The other show that I'm watching is, again, the complete opposite of Love Chinibyo and Other Delusions, and that is Kengan Ashura. That is a show that is brimming with action, violence, and martial arts. It takes place in a world where businessmen hire people to fight for them in underground fights. This is just how business works in this world. They are like, if your fighter can beat my fighter, you can get a part of my company and shares or whatever their deal that they made. It doesn't take long for the story to turn from just a few underground fights to a full-on tournament, and it's a kind of a win-win situation where the businessmen get what they want and the fighters get to prove who's the strongest. Uh, it's really cool to see this hand-to-hand combat. Each fighter has a backstory and their own weird type of fighting style. It's an anime, so these people have superhuman strength and abilities. It's just an enjoyable action-packed anime, and I'm loving it so far. And it is, but the thing is that it is in 3D, and I do prefer 2D. But this is the 3D animation is done really, really well in the show. Not as good as Beastars, or maybe it is. Nope. Maybe for what it's going for, it's just as good as Beastars. Honestly, now that we're on the topic of 3D anime, the only one that I've watched and I'm kind of like iffy about is called, what was it called? Austrian. It's something that's on Netflix. That's the only one that I didn't really. I wish that I didn't really care for. I think that's one of the first ones that I've watched that were in 3D. And also, I think what was it? Berserk was not. Something when the action's going down, it can be pretty good, but other times it just looks like a PS2 game. I prefer my 2D, but let me get to the point here by saying that Kengan Ashura's 3D looks really, really good. So give it a chance. Again, this is another anime that's on Netflix. So now we've made it to the main discussion of the video. How important is the length of a video game in comparison to its price? Now the thing that kind of brought this topic up is the fact that Resident Evil 3 dropped not too long ago, the remake of Resident Evil 3, and that dropped for $60. And a lot of people have come out and said that that game is a bit on the shorter side, only making it around 6 hours. Of course, there is replaying through the game again, and I think it does come with a multiplayer. But it still brings up the question, how important is the length of a game in comparison to its price? Depending on who you are, you're going to have a different answer to this question, which is why I wish I had a guest here to talk more thoroughly about this topic with, but maybe I'll bring this question up again in a future podcast. But to get back on topic, some people may say it doesn't matter, that they just want to support their favorite developers. Some say they just want to just focus on the single players, all that's really important to them. Some people say as long as they had fun. Some may say it depends on the multiplayer aspect, the replay value of the game. There is just a ton of different factors that go into, buying a game depending on who you are. For me personally, it depends on the single player experience. And I did a little bit of math. So that means for me, for every $3 that I spend on the game, I expect to get at least an hour out of that game, out of the single player experience. So let's say if I spend $24 on a game, I'm expecting to get at least 8 hours out of that single player experience. If I drop $60 on a game, then I am expecting to get 20 hours. And I'm talking about, playing through the game just through the first time playing through. So let me go ahead and clarify a little bit. So let's say if I drop $60 on a game and I only get around 12 hours out of it, well, some people may say, or the game may say, hey, replay through the game again now that you've unlocked this higher difficulty. That does not count. But what I will count is, let's say that when I replay through a game again, and it's a bit different through my second playthrough, like let's say through the Ratchet and Clank games, you can play those through most of those games. You can play, if not all of them, on New Game Plus mode, to where you play through the main, you play through the game again, but you keep all your upgrades from the previous playthrough. And then the thing is that with a lot of Ratchet and Clank games, that your weapons, when they upgrade, they get new abilities and new attachments to where they act a bit differently and changes the gameplay up a little bit, and the enemies are a bit tougher. So I kind of like that aspect, when it changes, when your gameplay changes up at least a little bit, like with Ratchet and Clank and its weapons. Or let's look at a game like Infamous, where you can play through the game, and with that game you can play as either kind of a good guy or a bad guy, and depending on what you decide to choose, that you actually get different abilities. So it's actually worth playing through the game again. And also, I think you get some story. You get to change the story just a little bit, how different events play out, so it's worth it playing through that. Or when a game allows you to play through the game again with a completely different playstyle, for like particular Skyrim, like you could play through this game focusing on one particular aspect of your abilities, but then you can replay through the game again and go down a completely different path. Or the more story driven games, like maybe like that, or maybe games that where you make different decisions, like with the Outer Worlds, one playthrough can be completely different to do compared to the other one. So when it comes to those types of replay values through the when it comes to those types of games where you get to replay the game in a completely different faction in a completely different way, you guys know what I'm trying to say. When the game allows you to do that, then I think it's worth playing through the game again, and that's how I count it. But if it's like, oh, you just unlocked a higher difficulty, I don't count that. So I've stuck to this way of thinking for the longest time. I just can't remember the last time that I decided to drop $60 on a game that I didn't get at least 20 hours out of. A lot of people like to factor in multiplayer, like, oh yes, the single player may be short, but the multiplayer you can get an infinite amount of hours out of. I don't count that, because I just don't play multiplayer enough to where that is a factor. And a lot of people, and again, we just went over the whole factor of, what about the replaying through the game again? Again, it just depends on what I'm getting out of replaying through that game again. Is it completely different, or am I just playing on a higher difficulty? So I'm not saying that I won't, play a shorter game like Resident Evil 6. But what I am saying is that I'm going to wait for that price to drop before I even think about buying that game. And that goes for any game that is too short in my mind for the price that I'm willing to pay for it. Again, this is just my opinion though, and I would love to hear you guys' opinions down in the comments below. So this is going to bring an end to the very first episode of the Nerdy Station podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it was a little bit shaky, especially with this being my very first podcast and not having a guest, but maybe next time I'll have a guest, and of course I'll be even better now that I've done this the first time. So I hope you guys tune in for episode 2 of the Nerdy Station podcast. Again, working title. I hope you all have an extremely nice day. And let's play that outro music.